ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायण नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भगवते उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 22. Pṛthu Maharaj's meeting with the four Kumāras. Maitreya Vacha Janeshu Pragdanstva Evam Pṛtum Pṛthula Vikramam Tatropajagmur Munayas Chatvara Suryavarchasaha. The great sage Maitreya said, while the citizens were thus praying to the most powerful king Pṛthu, the four Kumāras, who were as bright as the sun, arrived on the spot. Tamstu Siddheshwaran Raja Vyomnavatarato Vrichisha Lokan Apapan Kurvanan Sanugo Chasta Lakshitan. Seeing the glowing effulgence of the four Kumaras, the master of all mystic power, the king and his associates could recognize them as they descended from the sky. Taddarshanodakta pranan pratyadishtur ivottitaha sadasyanugo vainya Indriyesho Gunan Iva. Seeing the four Kumaras, Pṛthu Maharaj was greatly anxious to receive them. Therefore, the king, with all his officers, very hastily got up as anxiously as a conditioned soul whose senses are immediately attracted by the modes of material nature. Gauravad Yantrita Sabhyah प्रस्रयान्नत कन्दरः विधिवत् पूजयां चक्रे गृहीताधर्यहासनान्. When the great sages accepted their reception according to the instructions of the Shastras and finally took their seats offered by the king, influenced by the glories of the sages, immediately bowed down. Thus, he worshipped the four Kumaras. तत्पादशौचसलिलैर्मार्जितालकबन्धनः तत्र शीलवतां वृत्तम् आचरन् मानयन् इव. After this, the king took the water that had washed the lotus feet of the Kumaras and sprinkled it over his hair. By such respectful action, the king, as an exemplary personality, showed how to receive a spiritually advanced personality. हाटकासक हाटकासन आसीनान् स्वदिष्णेष्व इव पावकान् श्रद्धान् संयम समुक्तः प्रीतः प्राह भवाग्रजान्. The four great sages were elder to Lord Shiva, and they were seated on the golden throne. They appeared just like fire blazing on an altar. Maharaj Pṛthu, out of his great gentleness and respect for them, began to speak with great restraint as follows. Pṛthurvacha Aho acharitam kim me mangalam mangalayanaha yasya va darshanam hyashid durdarshasanam cha yogi bihi. King Pṛthu spoke, my dear great sages, auspiciousness personified, it is very difficult for even the mystic yogis to see you. Indeed, you are very rarely seen. I do not know what kind of pious activity I have performed for you to grace me by appearing before me without difficulty. Kim tasya durlabhataram iha loka paratra cha yasya vipra prasidanti sivo vishnuscha sanugaha. Any person upon whom the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas are pleased can achieve anything, which is very rare to obtain in this world as well as after death. Not only that, but one who also receives the favor of the auspicious Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu, who accompany the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Naiva lakshayate loko lokan paryartato piyan yatha sarva drisha sarva atmanam yesya hetavah. Pṛthu Maharaj continued, although you are traveling in all planetary systems, people cannot know you, just as they cannot know the Super Soul. Although he is within everyone's heart as a witness of everything, even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva cannot understand the Super Soul. Adhanapi te dhanya sadhavo gruhamedinah yah gruhat hi arha varyambu truna bhumishwaravaraha. A person who is not very rich and is attached to family life becomes highly glorified when saintly persons are present in his home. The master and servants who are engaged in offering the exalted visitors water, a sitting place, and paraphernalia for reception are glorified, and the home itself is also glorified. व्यालालय द्रुमावै तिष्व अरिक्ताखिल सम्पदः यद्गृहास्तीर्थपादीय पादतीर्थविवर्जिताः. On the contrary, even though full of all opulence and material prosperity, any householder's house, when the devotees of the Lord are never allowed to come in, and where there is no water for washing their feet, is to be considered a tree in which all venomous serpents live. स्वागतं वो द्विजश्रेष्ठा यद्व्रतानि मुमुक्षवः चरन्ति श्रद्धया धीरा bala eva bhranti cha. Maharaj Pṛthu offered his welcome to the four Kumaras, addressing them as the best of the Brahmanas. He welcomed them, saying, from the beginning of your birth, you strictly observed the vows of celibacy, and although you are experienced in the path of liberation, you are keeping yourself like just like small children. कच्चिन्न कुशलं नाथ इन्द्रियार्थार्थवेदिनां व्यसनावाप एतस्मिन् पतिता पतितानां स्वकर्मभिः. Pṛthu Maharaj inquired from the sages about persons entangled in this dangerous material existence because of their previous actions. Could such persons, whose only aim is to sense is, only aim is sense gratification, be blessed with any good fortune? Bhavatsu kushal prashna atma rameshu nesyati नेष्यते कुशला कुशला yatra na santi mati vrittayah. Pṛthu Maharaj continued, my dear sirs, there is no need to ask about your good and bad fortune because you are always absorbed in spiritual bliss. The mental concoction of the auspicious and inauspicious does not exist in you. ततहं कृतविश्रम्भः सुहृदो वस्तपस्विनां सम्पृच्छे भव एतस्मिन् क्षेम केनाञ्जसा भवेत्. I am completely assured that personalities like you are the only friends for persons who are blazing in fire of material existence. I therefore ask you how in this material world we can very soon achieve the ultimate goal of life. व्यक्तम् आत्मवताम् आत्मा भगवान् आत्मभवानः स्वानाम् अनुग्रहायेन एमां सिद्धरूपी चरिताजः. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always anxious to elevate the living entities who are his part and parcel, and for their special benefit, the Lord travels all over the world in the form of self realized persons like you. Maitreya पृथोस्तत् सूक्तम् आकर्ण्य सारं सुष्णुमितं मधु स्म स्मयमान इव प्रीत्या कुमारः प्रत्युवाचः. The great sage Maitreya continued. Thus Sanat Kumara, the best of the celibates, after hearing the speech of Pṛthu Maharaj, which was meaningful, appropriate, full of precise words, and very sweet to hear, smiled with full satisfaction and began to speak as follows. Sanat Kumar Uvacha Sadhu Prishtam Mahāraja Sarvabhuta Hitatmana Bhavata Vidusha Chapi Sadhu Namatir Idrishi. Sanat Kumara said, My dear King Pṛthu, I am very nicely questioned by you. Such questions are beneficial for all living entities, especially because they are raised by you, who are always thinking of good of others. Although you know everything, you ask such questions because that is the behavior of saintly persons. Such intelligence is befitting your position. Sangamah khalu sadhunam उभयेषां च सम्मतः यत् सम्भाषणः सम्प्रश्नः सर्वेषां वितनोति सम्. When this is a congregation of when there is a congregation of devotees, their discussions, questions, and answers become conclusive to both the speaker and the audience. Thus, such a meeting is beneficial for everyone's real happiness. अस्त्येव राजभवतो मधुद्विषः पादारविन्दस्य गुणानुवादने रतिर्दुरापविधुनोति नैष्टिकी कामं कषायं मलम् अंतरात्मनः. Sanat Kumara continued. My dear king, you already have an inclination to glorify the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such attachment is very difficult to achieve, but when one has attained such unflinching faith in the Lord, it automatically cleanses lusty desires from the core of the heart. शास्त्रेष्वेयान् एव सुनिश्चितो नृणां क्षेमस्य सदृग्यग् sorry क्षेमस्य सद्रयग् विम्श्रेषु हेतुः असंग आत्मा व्यतिरिक्त आत्मनि दृढ़ा दृढ़ा दृढ़ारते ब्रह्मणि निर्गुणे च या. It has been conclusively decided in the scriptures, after due consideration, that the ultimate goal for the welfare of human society is detachment from the bodily conception of life and increased and steadfast attachment for the spiritual Lord, who is transcendental beyond the modes of material nature. सा श्रद्धया भगवद्धर्मचर्यया जिज्ञासयाधिकात्मिक योगनिष्ठया योगेश्वरोपासनया च नित्यं पुण्यं श्रवः कथया पुण्यया च. Attachment for the Supreme can be increased by practicing devotional service, inquiring about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, applying Bhakti Yoga in life, worshipping the Yogeshwara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by hearing and chanting about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These actions are pious in themselves. Attendriya Sagoshtra Snaya Tat Sammatanam Apir अपरिग्रहेण च विविक्तरुच्या परितोष आत्मनि विना हरेर्गुणपीयूषपानात्. One has to make progress in spiritual life by not associating with persons who are simply interested in sense gratification and making money. Not only such persons, but one who associates with such persons should be avoided. One should mold his life in such a way that he cannot live in peace without drinking the nectar of the glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari. One can be thus elevated by being disgusted by the taste for sense gratification. Ahimsaya paramahamsya charyaya smritya mukundar charitaghya sidhuna यमैर अकामैर नियमैश्चापि अनिन्द्यया निरीहया द्वन्द्व तितिक्षया च. A candidate for spiritual advancement must be non-violent, must follow in the footsteps of great acharyas, must always remember the nectar of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, must follow the regulative principles without material desire, and while following the regulative principles, should not blaspheme others. A devotee should lead a very simple life and not be disturbed by the duality of opposing elements. He should learn to tolerate them. Hare Krishna. So we'll take it from here. Um, this is such a wonderful chapter. These are the instructions of Kumaras. Yeah. In fact, this means also Kumara Sampradaya, yeah, which we know is inaugurated by the four Kumaras, Sanak, Sanandan, Sanatan, Sanat Kumar. Canto 4, chapter 22. Yeah. So we have covered verse till verse 24. We'll cover the remaining tomorrow. But let's understand the value of this. Till this, already we have so many things to understand here. So it is said the four Kumaras were very, very bright and like sun, arrived on the spot. This is a sign of a good fortune arising in our life when sadhus come, uh, and a sudden surprise is even more indication of such a blessing. Otherwise, also we can see that having it is said the four Kumaras are described here as Siddheshwaran, which means master of all mystic power. Yeah. However, the special power of Kumaras mentioned herein is that whatever place they went to would immediately become sinless. During the reign of Maharaj Pṛthu, everything on the surface of globe was sinless, and therefore the Kumaras decided to see the king. Ordinarily, they do not go to any planet which is sinful. Hmm. So, this also means when we want to grace the association of sadhus in our life, we need to have a very clean life. We need to have regulated life. Yeah. And of course, it doesn't mean that, okay, we should first perfectly become clean and then we invite them. No, we have to endeavor ourselves and do as much as we can, and at the same time when sadhus come in our life we take the opportunity. And the same thing happened. Seeing the four Kumaras, Pṛthu Maharaj was greatly anxious to receive them. So Prabhupada mentions in the Pad that here Pṛthu Maharaj is compared to such a conditioned soul, not because he was a conditioned soul, but because he was so anxious to receive the Kumaras that it was as if without them he would have lost his life. So sometimes now we will say, hey, you should be very stable, we should be very composure and steady. Uh, why devotees are bhavak? Why do they have this? Is because they are very anxious to get blessed. Hmm. In this world, everyone is attracted by a person of the same category. A drunkard is attracted to persons who are also drunkard. Similarly, a saintly person is attracted by other saintly persons. Pṛthu Maharaj was in the topmost position of spiritual advancement, and as such, he was attracted by the Kumaras who were also of the same category. It is said, therefore, that a man is known by his company. Hmm. And the four Kumaras, as I was mentioning here, thus King Pṛthu worshipped Kumaras. What does that process means? It is that he is becoming part of the parampara. In the purport, Prabhupada is mentioning the four Kumaras are parampara spiritual masters of Vaishnava Sampradaya. Out of the four Kumaras, namely Brahma Sampradaya, Sri Sampradaya, Kumara Sampradaya, and Rudra Sampradaya, the disciplic succession of the spiritual master to disciple known as Kumara Sampradaya is coming down from the four Kumaras. So Pṛthu Maharaj was very respectful to the Sampradaya Acharya. In fact, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said, Sakshat Dharitrena Samasta Shastra. A spiritual master or the Parampara Acharya should be respected exactly like the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Uh, Pṛthu Maharaj did this properly. Therefore, the words used here as Prasrayanata Kandaraha, out of humility. And he bowed down, Kandaraya, bowed down before the Kumaras. And then Tatpada Sauja Salilar. And what he did, this is very important. When we welcome sadhus in at our home, or when, we know this, whenever Prabhupada used to go, the most important is first take the blessings. How? By washing their feet, by sprinkling the water on their head. This is what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said. Apani Achari Prabhu Jivera Shikhaya. It is very well known that whatever Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught in his life as Acharya, he himself practiced. Even though one may be an incarnation of Krishna or especially empowered by him, he should not advertise that he is an incarnation. Uh, People will automatically accept the real truth in due course of time. We don't have to do all show off. In due course of time, whatever reality is there, it will be helping one to accept the Lord. Pṛthu Maharaj was the ideal Vaishnava king, therefore, he taught others by his personal example. When a saintly person comes to one's home, it is the Vedic custom first to wash his feet with water and then sprinkle this water over the heads of oneself and one's family. Pṛthu Maharaj did this for he was an exemplary teacher of the people in general. Hmm. And then the four Kumaras, they began to speak uh, with great restraint and as follows. What it is said that Kumaras, in the purport Prabhupada mentions, when the Kumaras were born out of Lord Brahma, they were requested to get married and increase the population. In the beginning of creation, there was a great need of population. Therefore, Brahma was creating one son after another. However, when the Kumaras were requested to do so, they declined. They wanted to remain brahmachari throughout life and be engaged in the devotional service. The Kumaras are called Naishtika Brahmachari, meaning they are never to marry. They have this resolved, yeah, that they'll never marry. Because of their refusal to marry, Lord Brahma became so angry that his eyes became reddish. From between his eyes, Lord Shiva or Rudra appeared. The mode of anger is consequently known as Rudra. Lord Shiva also has a Sampradaya party known as Rudra Sampradaya, and they are also known as Vaishnavas. That is the thing. We can see that even Rudra Sampradaya, whoever follows, is part of Vaishnava Sampradaya. Hmm? When some, I mean, then it goes further. When something uncommon happens in one's progressive spiritual life, it should be understood to be incurred by Ajnata Sukruti. Uh, Ajnata Sukruti means pious activity beyond one knowledge. You don't know, but we are sure that we had some mercy some way or the other. That is the reason we are becoming or we are trying to become devotees. We are trying to hear Bhagavatam, we are trying to do japa, all these things. It is not because of mm, one's own efforts, or it's not even because of the efforts of others. Yeah, here we can see some sukruti that cannot be explained by words. To see personally the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his pure devotee is not an ordinary incident. When such things happen, they should be understood to be caused by previous pious activities. Yesham tu antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam. One who is completely free from all resultant actions of sinful activities and who is absorbed only in pious activities can engage in devotional service. So, if one is becoming devotee or one is not becoming devotee, that this is the justification. It doesn't, yeah, we cannot generalize that, hey, everyone should be a devotee, or we can just generalize that everyone shouldn't be devotee. No, it is possible based on what they have been blessed. Although Pṛthu Maharaj's life was full of pious activities, he was wondering how his audience with Kumaras happened. He could not imagine. This is sign of humility on part of King Pṛthu, whose life was so full of pious activities. So if he is thinking, it's out of humility. Any person upon whom the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas are pleased can achieve anything which is very rare to obtain in this world as well as after death. Not only that, but one who also receives the favor of auspicious Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, uh, whose company the Brahmanas, uh, they are very, very fortunate. In the purport, Prabhupada mentions, Premanjana Shurta Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Swarupam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. He said, the Lord is already in the heart of everyone, but the Vaishnavas and Brahmanas actually perceive and see him always in ecstasy. Hmm? And then Pṛthu Maharaj continued, although you are traveling in all planetary systems, people cannot know you because that needs some qualification. Even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva cannot understand the super soul. Yeah, this is what here it's mentioned. Atmanam. To understand the Atma Tattva, it's not so easy to understand. How to understand this from the purport we can see. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said, Muhyanti yat Surayaha. Great demigods like Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra, and Chandra are sometimes bewildered trying to understand the Supreme Lord. So it so happened that when Krishna was present on this planet, Lord Brahma and King Indra also mistook him. And what to speak of great yogis and jnanis? It goes further. Yeah. Um, one has to purify his senses and engage in the service of the Lord. Then gradually one can realize who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and who is Vaishnava. Adhanapite dhanya sadavo graha medana yad graha hi arha varyambu trina bhumishwarava. Means a person who is not very rich and is attached to family life becomes highly glorified when saintly persons are present in his home. See, this means having the association of a sadhu and having his arrival, gracing the home is a blessing. The master and servants who are engaged in offering the exalted visitors water, a sitting place, and paraphernalia for reception are glorified, and the home itself also is glorified. That is the beauty of attending. The fact is that every householder, regardless of his position or economic condition, can at least receive saintly guests with great devotion and offer them drinking water. For drinking water is available always. In India, the custom is that even an ordinary person is offered a glass of water if he suddenly visits home, and one cannot offer him foodstuff. And one cannot offer him foodstuff. If there is no water, then one can offer a sitting place, even if it is a straw mat. And if one has no straw mat, then he can immediately cleanse the ground and ask the guest. One second. And if one has, he can immediately cleanse the ground and ask the guest to sit there. Supposing that a householder cannot even do that, then with folded hands he can simply receive the guest saying, Welcome. And if he cannot do that, then he should feel very sorry for his poor condition and shed tears and simply offer obeisances with his whole family, wife, and children. In this way, he can satisfy any guest, even if the guest is a saintly person or a king. That is the beauty. On the contrary, in the verse number, oh, we are still in 11, okay, is even though full of opulence and material prosperity, any householder where the devotees of the Lord are never allowed to come in. We are talking about atheistic people. In this verse, the word Tirthapadiya indicates the devotee of the Lord. As far as Brahmanas are concerned, in the previous verse, the mode of reception has been already described. Now, in this verse, special stress is given to the Vaishnavas. What happens? Uh, and where there is no water for washing their feet is to be considered a tree in which the poisonous serpents live. Uh, anyway, it goes further in the purports that is mentioned about the Ekadandi, Tridandi sannyasis, what is the difference, and Mayavad sannyasis, yeah, we can see are Ekadandi sannyasis, whereas Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya are Tridandi. Hmm. Ekadandi sannyasis can be situated on the platform of pure Brahman because they are aware that the spirit soul is different from the body, but they are mainly impersonalist. And what happens to the Tridandi? They understand there is spirit soul in form of Jivatma, in the form of Paramatma. Yeah? And then there is this three through which he understands. That's why he is carrying a Tridandi. There is this explanation going further, but yeah, please refer verse number 12, the purport. And then Maharaj Pṛthu offered his welcome, addressed them with nice words. Yeah. From the beginning of your birth, you strictly observed the vow of celibacy. And although you are experienced in the path of liberation, you are keeping yourselves just like a small children. So, In fact, it is said Maharaj Pṛthu specifically appreciated the position of Kumaras because they maintained the brahmacharya vow from the very beginning of their birth. Maharaj Pṛthu, however, expressed his great appreciation of Vaishnavism by addressing the Kumaras as Vaishnava Shrestha. In other words, everyone should offer respect to a Vaishnava without considering his source of birth. Vaishnave Jati Buddhihi. No one should consider a Vaishnava in terms of birth. Huh? The Vaishnava is always the best of the Brahmanas, and as such, one should offer all respects to a Vaishnava, not only as a Brahmana but as the best of the Brahmanas. Mm. Going further, I'll wind up soon. Going to the last three verses, mainly 22 to 24, are very important. Of course, the other, 20 is also important, where we can see attachment to the glories of Lord's glorification cleans one's lusty desires. Verse 20. And then the only cause of benefit for human society has been conclusively established based on detachment from the bodily conception and attachment to what? Attachment to the Lord. This is verse number 21. And 21, yeah. In the purport, Prabhupada is saying, Athat Brahma Jigyasa means that in order to get out of this bodily conception, one has to increase attachment to or inquiry about Brahman. And the process is Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. So there are two steps involved. It's not one step. Usually, sometimes we think, oh, it's all about renunciation, it's all about detachment, it's all about salvation, mukti, moksha, virakti, and all these things. No, it's not just that, but actually, it should be the next important thing is about rakti. In the verse itself, it is mentioned. Shastrasva iyan eva sunishchito nunam. He is saying, Kshemasya sadrak vimrasheshu hetuhu. Asanga atma vyati rikta atmani. And then Rathir. Dhrida Rathir Brahmani Nirgune Chaya. That is important. It's not just detachment from a material world, material things, but attachment to the Supreme Lord. And then now we talk about, uh, if you remember last chapter, we discussed about Bhakti Mishra Jnana, no Karma. And here we are talking about Jnana Mishra Bhakti. What happens means when you are acquiring knowledge and practicing Bhakti, it becomes mm, uh, Jnana Mishra Bhakti. How is it mentioned? Sa Shraddhaya Bhagavad Dharmacharyaya. It is said that attachment for the Supreme can be increased by practicing devotional service. Inquiring means to gain knowledge. Inquiring about the Supreme Lord. Applying Bhakti Yoga in life. uh, and by hearing and chanting about the glories of the Supreme Lord. These actions are pious in themselves. This is very, very important. Yeah, as I said, 22 to 24. Please mark it. You can read the purports. Yeah, it is Prahlad Maharaj says, Naisham Matis Tavad Urukra Mangrim Sparshati Anartapagamo Yath Artah Mahiyasam Padarajobhishekam Nishkinchananam na Vrinita Yavat. This is a very famous verse. Yeah. This says that one should take shelter of the pure devotee who has nothing to do with this material world, but is simply engaged in the service of the Lord. In this verse, it is recommended Yogeshwara Upasana, that one serve the lotus feet of the topmost yogi or the devotee. To serve the topmost devotee means to hear from him about the glories of the Supreme Lord. To hear the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from the mouth of a pure devotee is to acquire a pious life. Anyway, this purport is so nice. Yeah. The conclusion is that to increase attachment for Supreme Lord, one has to accept a bona fide spiritual master and learn from him the methods of devotional service and hear from him about the transcendental message and glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this way, one has to increase his conviction about devotional service. then it will be very easy to increase attachment for the Supreme Lord. And then what does that mean? In the verse 23, it is said, one has to make progress in spiritual life by not associating with persons who are simply interested in material things. One can be thus elevated by being disgusted with the taste of for sense gratification. That is the secret. So we should develop the detachment to the material things. And in fact, the purport, it says the Krishna consciousness movement is started for this purpose, so that hundreds of ISKCON centers may give people a chance to hear and chant, to accept the spiritual master, and to disassociate themselves from persons who are materially interested. For in this way, one can make solid advancement in going back home, back to Godhead. Then I conclude with the last verse, which is 24. Uh, अहिंसया अहिंसया पारमहंस्य चर्यया स्मृत्या मुकुन्दाचरिताग्रसीदुना यमैर अकामैर नियमैश्चापि अनिन्दया निरीहया द्वन्द्व तितिक्षया च. These are the qualities. A candidate for spiritual advancement must have these qualities. Now, what are the qualities? It's mentioned must follow the footsteps of great acharyas. Usually, this is first and foremost thing, but usually we slip this and remaining we may do. Must always remember the pastimes of the Lord. Yeah, I can do. Must follow the regulative principles. Yes, I can do. While following the regulative principles, should not blaspheme others. Oh, yeah, I can be to myself. No, no problem. Why not accepting the acharyas, following in their line? A devotee should lead a very simple life and not be disturbed by the duality of opposing elements. He should learn to tolerate. Yeah. Again, purport is full of very important imports. Yeah, one can take and yeah, understand what 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 is that we can do. Yeah, it said simply eating for living and not living for eating, and sleeping only 6 to 7 hours a day are principles to be followed by devotees. As long as the body is there, it is subjected to influence of climatic changes, diseases, natural disturbances, the threefold miseries. We cannot avoid them. Sometimes we receive letters from neophyte devotees questioning why they have fallen sick, although pursuing Krishna consciousness. They should learn from this verse that they have to become dvandvat tikshaya, have to be tolerant from the duality. In fact, Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita 2:14, Tam titikshasva bharata, my dear Arjuna, please try to tolerate all these disturbances. Be fixed in Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Panchakalpatarabhyasya kripa sindhubhyo vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yeah, thank you so much. We'll continue from 25 tomorrow.